Hi, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully people will trickle in and not have any difficulties with the Zoom link. I would like to start with the introductions. And so this event is focusing on access and functional needs disaster preparedness. And I am here with Craig Towler, who's from the Center for People with Disabilities. He is the Community Outreach Coordinator. And I am Taylor Smith. I am the Disaster Recovery Specialist for the Town of Superior. And I would like for Craig to go ahead and just talk a little bit about yourself and your background and your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here today and joining us this evening for this little workshop. And we have a great little presentation. And so I work with the Center for People with Disabilities, and we are an independent living center based out of Boulder, Colorado, and we serve 5 surrounding counties as well. And we really work with removing barriers to independent living. So one of the barriers is definitely of independent living is knowing what to do and being prepared when we have to live through events that could make us have to go to a disaster shelter or anything like that. And in our communities, we have experienced wildfires and we have a snowstorm that's coming tonight. So all the skills that we're going to talk about tonight are really about preparation and just helping better understand how to keep ourselves protected and remain independent and have the tools available. Hi, Billy. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, and the training that we are doing today, it really comes from knowing that the materials and education that is out there isn't necessarily focused on our community and people with access and functional needs. So we're here to talk about our own personal experiences, share stories, and give some more specialized pointers and tips about how we can feel better prepared and safe during natural disasters. And yeah, looking forward to a good one. We have a small enough group today that we hope it's interactive and you can ask questions specific to your experiences and life and have a nice interactive conversation so we can really have everyone leave here with the better understanding and feel more prepared going into the future and situations. So thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I am the disaster recovery specialist for the Town of Superior. So I am in charge of, all the community outreach engagement programs we put out there. My specialty focus is mostly access and functional needs and animal preparedness. I am deaf myself, so this is a really passionate topic of mine, and I'm really excited that you're here to join us. And I like to bring that deaf perspective in because a lot of people are not aware of what that is. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we would like to ask you all, what exactly is access and functional needs? And while I ask that question, I also want everybody to know that this is going to be more of an interactive dialogue with everybody. So don't feel like you have to wait until the end of the presentation to ask your question, because we would like to hear about your own stories, your experiences, and also what has worked for you and what has not worked for you. I know Billy has experience in disaster management, so I'd be curious to know what his perspective is and experience. So I'm going to leave that question. What is access and functional needs to you?
Billy, you didn't know we were going to put you on the spot right away, did you?
Hi guys, how you guys all doing today? Oh, did my sound work?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in a new location, so we're trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. So thank you for bearing with us. It sounds like the sound is coming from, because I unmuted and then I could hear Billy.
Yeah.
but then we get a big echo when we talk. Is it coming from the TV by chance?
Let's try that. See if it works.
Billy, could you do a sound test for us and see if we can hear you?
Well, got you 1, 2, 3, tell you your story, the 3 little pigs. No, it didn't work. Checking 1, 2, 3. Look at me. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Okay, is anybody, can you hear me now? Okay, we're good. So let me backtrack. Access of functional needs is whole community inclusion. So that includes people from diverse cultures, races, and nation of origin. It also includes children, elderly population, individuals with short-term and long-term disabilities, pregnant individuals, late-stage pregnancies, people living in institutionalized settings. It also includes the houseless, low income, individuals with pharmacological dependency. That's a hard word to say. People with chronic conditions and injuries, limited English proficiency, people that are transportation disadvantaged, but it also expands that the disability definition for people who benefit from physical, communication, and program access, and also includes people who has access and functional needs that may or may not meet the civil rights law definitions are also part of other diverse and sometimes conflicting definitions of disability. So really the whole idea is whole community inclusion. So it doesn't matter where you range on that spectrum, is just access to different services, whether it be transportation, whether it be medical, whether it be food, infrastructure, any of those things. So the top 4 things we like to really make sure you walk away with tonight for tips for preparedness is staying informed, which we all know is very, very key. That can mean, different avenues of where you get your information and what's going on. Number 2, know the hazards in your area. So depending on where you live, you want to prepare for those different hazards because they're going to vary. Number 3, always make a plan. And it's going to be different for every individual depending on what your needs are and what you need access to. And number 4, we have a grab list or a go bag, and we'll get more into depth about those things. So in staying informed, if you are in the Boulder County area, we encourage you to sign up for BOCO Alert. Or if you're in Grand Junction, which I know, Billy, that's where you're located, encouraging people and yourself to stay updated in your local areas updates. Also encourage people to check out the NOAA weather radio if you have the ability to do that. And then number 3 is a personal risk assessment. Really take into account what's going on in around your surroundings. Really listen to yourself, whether you feel safe or not. And if you don't, then get out while you can, because you are your first responder for yourself, basically. And then, so we like to ask, where do you typically receive information when there is a disaster? So like I mentioned, there are different avenues. Some of you may have a landline phone. So make sure that when you sign up for your alerts to really include that landline phone. I know nowadays everyone has a cell phone, either call or text. For deaf individuals like myself, I like to really encourage people to check out Reach Well app. Boulder County has really been pushing that out as a way for people who have limited English proficiency or are deaf can really access information through that, because they have translators and they have interpreters as well. TV or radio is also a really great resource, or your social media accounts, but also be very careful where the sources come from when you are on social media. Consider your sources, and also check on the different apps that are useful to your specific needs. Is there anything you want to add to that?
We can go next slide and then I'll jump in.
Perfect.
And it's really important to know that there are multiple ways to receive information as well, because as we were talking about, there's not only a landline, but a cell phone, text, radio, or apps. As we can see here, where during different hazards or emergency situations, there are different lifelines and infrastructure that may not be working. For example, if you lose your power, and a lot of the landlines now for home residential phones are really landlines that go through internet cables. So if your power goes out, they're no longer like the old school landlines that are actually physical. You will no longer have access to that. And then it's the same with communication technology. We want to just kind of put these different scenarios in the back of your head, not to cause stress, but to really allow us to go through the thought process of how do we get prepared for all of the, the multitude of different experiences that we can have, so that we can go in with confidence, knowing that there's a plan A and a plan B, making sure that we're safe in all situations. So depending on the hazard or emergency that's happening, things such as power, communication technology, different types of medical equipment, transportation infrastructure, and access can all be impacted depending on the emergency. So right now, depending on where you are, if you're in the mountains or the Front Range or foothills as we are, we're getting ready for a pretty big snowstorm that's supposed to come. And we've been informed through our alert channels that it's going to be a storm that causes some type of disruption. And we've been told to be on alert for potential lifelines such as power and transportation to be affected. So this is actually perfect timing, because as we're getting these alerts and knowing that there's a potential storm coming that can have an impact on us, we can kind of think through the checklists and the strategies to help us stay prepared to know what to do if the power goes out. An example is I use a wheelchair, and I have a lift in my house that takes me from one floor to the other. And that's what I use to get to different floors of my house. So I need to make sure that the backup battery for that chair is always charged, because if there's a power outage, I'm going to need to still utilize that chair if I'm downstairs. So it's always good to kind of have this in the back of your mind. So if you know if there's a disruption of some things that you use every single day and rely on for mobility and accessibility or for medical purposes, that we have a backup plan just in case something happens as the result of a disaster or inclement weather or anything that could somehow change that. We don't want to just be relying on one single thing and kind of have all of that we're relying on, because if that changes, we still want to be able to be safe and independent. So moving forward, Taylor, you did a bunch of the first one, so I'll do a couple slides now. So the first part is Taylor was saying, before all the alerts and before any texts you get from alert systems, from BOCO alerts or anything like that, our first alert is going to be ourselves. We want to use our senses and knowledge of where we live to know what is possible and most likely to affect us given the time of year and where we are, so that we can know to better be prepared. So in Colorado and in most places, the hazards that we are probably most familiar with are wildfires, which we experience every year and year round, winter storms, which we're preparing for and experiencing right now, red flag warnings for high wind, also thunderstorms and lightning, flooding, landslides, drought, and tornadoes. So those are all hazards that affect us here in Colorado, and probably some more so than others. So an example of using ourselves as the first responders is, given the time of year and the weather outside, it's most likely that we're not going to be dealing with a tornado or a drought at this time, but most likely a winter storm or high winds or wildfires, given our recent history. So knowing that, we can have a better idea of how we want to be prepared for those specific scenarios and take that into account when we're putting together our transportation plans and our go bags and having communication with family and friends about assistance if it's needed. And with that comes down to making a plan. So now that we've gone through kind of the process of knowing where to look if there are alerts that go out, knowing if we rely on the news or the radio, that's the first place we're going to go once we sense something is going on, after we use our senses. And now that we've kind of identified the hazards in our area, that is what we're going to use to kind of help us make a plan. And we'll kind of do an overview with this slide, but after that, we'll go into more details about what this kind of looks like in a more kind of specific sense. And this is where we would love for anyone to kind of jump in, and we could maybe answer direct questions about what your plan would look like, because it's going to be very individual for each person. So what we talk about today will be kind of broad and what we think is sometimes overlooked and could be helpful, but please let us know if you have specific questions that we can help answer for yourself so that you can start creating a plan for yourself. So one of the first things when making a plan is we want to create a plan that involves family, close friends, and contacts. So a communication plan, so that if we have any kind of need, whether it be transportation or communication or anything like that, we want to know ahead of time who are the first people that we're going to call. And it's also good to know that if we don't have anyone close that is on that call list, that's important to recognize as well, because then your first phone call for transportation would be different than someone who has a family member that lives next door. And part of this plan as well, and part of the communication plan, is it's really important to determine a designated meeting area in case there is an evacuation. And this is really trying to identify where the nearest evacuation center would be to your residence or where you're at. And this would usually be a community center. Right now, we are doing this presentation from the Superior Community Center, which could potentially be an evacuation center, depending on what's going on, and lots of local rec centers or fire stations. And then also, depending on where you're at, fairgrounds. I know Boulder County Fairgrounds sometimes acts as it. So it's important to kind of know where these places could be, so you can maybe look at them on a map and ahead of time and say, okay, if I need to leave, this is probably where the closest place I'm going to be. And it could be helpful to even call them and start a conversation so that you could maybe drive that route or walk it and know how to get there. Because in a high stress environment, when you're evacuating, there's a lot of stuff going on. So if this is kind of something we've done before and have that muscle memory, it'll be a lot less stressful if we've already gone through the process ahead of time. And that's what, the biggest takeaway from today is not to stress anyone out or think that this is going to happen more than it should, but to really just be prepared so that when are in these situations, we're more prepared and can better take care of ourselves and our family members. And that comes down to, and then the next one is just give yourself extra time to mobilize if you need to before that evacuation order. So through the BOCO alerts and those other avenues that we get alerts on, and even using your own senses, that can give you a clue of when you will need to start kind of making moves yourself to know something should happen. So there are different levels of alerts where there will be evacuation alerts that are mandatory, and then there will be kind of warnings that come up before that and pre-evacuation alerts. And if you're someone like myself who uses a wheelchair, it might take a little bit longer to get ready and get out of the house. I would start the process a little bit sooner. So instead of waiting until the actual evacuation order goes out, I would start making moves and getting everything together during the pre-evacuation alerts, just to give myself a little extra time and to make sure that I'm not feeling overrushed during the process. So then a little bit more detail about creating your personal plan and what that looks like. So the first thing, and this with creating your plan, this is something we want to start sooner than later, because a lot of the things that we talk about, such as communication and putting your grab list and grab bag together and figuring out transportation, if you need transportation assistance, these are all things that we'll want to do well ahead of time. And they take time to form the relationships and plans to do it. So this is something we can get started on today, right after this presentation. We can start kind of using the tools that we've learned today to help forming your own plans that feel better performed. So the first and foremost, the one we think is, at the top of the list is definitely communication, is talking to the people in your community, your neighbors, your family, your local emergency response, and asking questions about where evacuation centers are and getting that information so you're familiar with it. But also, if you need help with transportation, to really communicate that with people that are close to you that could help assist with that, to make sure that if there is an emergency or a disaster or a need for an evacuation, you already have your transportation plan taken care of and settled, so that you're not having to stress about where your transportation is coming from at the last minute. And then also putting together your grab list. We'll go over specific examples that could pertain directly to you of things that we might forget and not think about in a high stress situation. So having them written down and available, the less thinking we have to do in the moment, the better. So we want to do the thinking now while we're relaxed and just sitting at home, drinking a nice cup of hot cocoa and warm, and not when we're in kind of the heat of the moment and feeling stressed out, because that's a good time to forget things. So by doing the pre-work now, we're really going to be setting ourselves up for success. So through communication, we have an example here is just for kind of helping facilitate the conversation with a good example is a couple years ago, I was living alone in Boulder during the Marshall Fire. And at that time, I didn't have a vehicle that I was driving. So what I did is I spoke to my neighbors who lived there, and we had a conversation that said, if there's a time when we needed to evacuate, since I don't have a vehicle, I would need help with transportation. And they agreed to be my support system if there was ever a need to evacuate. So when the Marshall fires happened and we were getting the evacuation warnings, I knew ahead of time that I would go to my neighbors and talk to them, and they would be my transportation to an evacuation center in the heat of the moment. And we understand that not everybody, has the nicest neighbors, or maybe you haven't talked to your neighbors before or know them, or maybe you have not everyone has family members that live close by. So a good way to do that is through using kind of what we call a communication card. And we have an example of one we created with City of Boulder Disaster Management, and we can help provide these to you if you would like to use one yourself or have a family or friend that could use them as well. And it's just a little card that kind of helps facilitate this conversation with your community members and their neighbors and friends, to kind of help them understand that you're someone who needs, transportation assistance, or maybe it'd be helpful to have your neighbor come knock on your door to make sure that you got the emergency alerts, or we can customize this in any way we need, but it's really a way to help facilitate a conversation, to let someone in your community and close network know that if there's an emergency or a disaster, that they're agreeing to help notify you or provide assistance in the ways that are articulated in that card. And this is just really a tool that can be used to help make this conversation a little bit easier and a little bit more straightforward, to not kind of take the pressure off of us. And talking to people we may not know very well, or even asking for help, can be very difficult. So that's why we want to just kind of help facilitate that conversation through this conversation card. And we'll do a post presentation email with the slides of this presentation and also templates of this card in case you want to print them out and use them yourself or provide them for a friend. And then the next part, so there are two types of kind of situations we want to prepare for. The first one is evacuations, and this would happen for wildfires or for many reasons. So in addition to transportation and knowing when to leave and routes, it's really important to know an evacuation plan of getting out of your house. And if you have an added mobility need or a challenge, or you use a mobility device such as a wheelchair, to know how you're going to leave your house under different circumstances. And this was something that I learned from firsthand experience during the in-car fires, which were a couple months after the Marshall fires. Is I lived pretty close to the area. We could see the disaster from my driveway, and we got the alert to evacuate. So we knew that it was time to go. But also what had happened was the power was out at the same time. And as a wheelchair user, my ramp to get from my house outside is located in my garage, and the garage door uses electricity. So I tell this story because this is something that we want to think about before we get into the evacuation scenario, which I hadn't thought about before. So I want to share my personal experience now to kind of help others be prepared and kind of think about these things that we don't think about until we're kind of in the heat of the moment. So in the picture on the slide, you can see an individual kind of reaching up and grabbing the little red hangy thing that's on a garage door. And that's how you release the spring on the garage door so you can open it manually if the power goes out. So I would recommend anyone that has a garage door and has the same scenario that I do, where if the power goes out and your garage door can't open, to go and practice using that release and making sure that you can reach it. For one, I had to extend mine so that I could reach it from my chair, and then also having the strength to be able to lift it up. And if that is something that isn't possible for whatever reason, to make sure that there's a second way to exit your home in case the power goes out. And it's important to talk about these scenarios so that, you know, the things that we never think about come up. And a lot of people that I talk with that are also wheelchair users, they always kind of have this aha moment where, oh, wow, that's where my ramp is too, because they're really big. And that's where most ramps are to get in and out of houses. And it's something that's easily overlooked. And now it's something that I'll never forget because I went through it. And that's why I want to share the experience too, so we can learn from this experience that I had, and you don't have to go through it yourself if that would be an issue. So not only figuring out transportation and where to go, but actually making a plan to make sure you know like the exits in your house, and there's more than one way to leave, and all that's taken care of. So, and then the next one is a shelter in place. And this can be an alert that goes out for many reasons as well. And sometimes it may not even be a formal shelter in place. It could be a scenario like we will probably have tomorrow with all the snow that we're going to get, where we are stuck inside for a period of time. So some of the things we talk about, it'll be important to be prepared for those situations as well. So where with an evacuation, we would be focused on transportation and a grab bag and leaving wherever you're at to get to somewhere safe. Where a shelter in place or stuck somewhere due to a storm, you're going to want to make sure you have resources at home, such as extra food, water, and reserve power, so that you can stay in your home or wherever you're at for an extended period of time and not be without those resources. So those are kind of two scenarios that we want to be prepared for and have in the back of our mind. So we're not only prepared to get out and leave quickly to keep ourselves safe, but we're also prepared to stay put and in the same place for an extended period of time if that's what is needed to stay safe as well. So next, we're going to go into a few kind of broad things of what should be a grab list and a go bag. And first of all, a grab list is what it sounds like. It's just a piece of paper that we can write down now, and we can tape it on the inside of a cabinet or on a door or by where you put your car keys. And this is just a place where we want to write down all the important things we don't want to forget, because we may think that we won't forget them, but when we're stressed in a high stress environment and moving quickly, I guarantee you we're always going to forget something. It's kind of like going to the grocery store without a list, and then you get halfway home, and you're like, ah, I forgot the eggs. And it's just a way to kind of help put everything there so it's easy to remember, and it's going to be just an asset that you use in these high stress situations. And then go bag is also what it sounds like. It's a bag that's going to go with you when you have to leave. So it's going to have the necessities in it that you won't be able to live with for an extended period of time. So medicines, batteries, clothing, hygiene, these are all things that you'll want to have in a bag that goes with you wherever you go, to make sure that if you're not able to go back to your house too quickly, that you'll be able to remain healthy and happy for that extended period of time. And the go bag usually has items in it to make sure that you'll be okay for, a couple of days, so 48 hours and more. So it's not a huge bag, it's not everything, it's just the literal essentials that you can't live without. So we're not taking the big screen TV, we're not trying to take the microwave, we're taking things like a toothbrush, toothpaste, and any kind of medicines that you might need, or things like that. So just the essentials.
And I want to touch on that. The reason we give those two options, the ground list and or the go bag, is that sometimes when we encourage people to prepare for disasters, and we will initially say, pack a go bag, have all these different things that you need, a lot of people were getting overwhelmed at just the thought of that alone. So we were transitioning to a grab list to make it easier for some individuals to just have the items that are most important, because sometimes that's easier to take the first step rather than, packing a bag and going, oh my God, this is just a lot for me. So it's gonna be different for every individual. So don't feel like you're not doing much. So choose what's best for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And through having these conversations now, the idea is to try and take it step by step and give ourselves enough time to build these grab lists and go bags over time. And you might have heard the term before, it's called blue sky days. Those are the days when we're not dealing with inclement weather or a situation where we need to evacuate. And those are the days that we want to take to kind of just have these kind of thought processes and problem solve and figure it out, so that when we do get to these situations where we need to move quickly, we've already done the work and taken care of that. So emergency preparedness and disaster preparedness is really about, it's a step we take to help ourselves feel more prepared and less stressed, so that we've already taken care of the hard part and we can just get ourselves to safety and not have to worry about any of the little details. So what we'll do now is we'll just go over a couple tips for your go bag and to put on your grab list in your go bag. And these are just things that we want to point out that might not be mentioned in other kind of trainings like this, that kind of go into more specific things. So these are tips for kind of if you use medications or have prescriptions or anything like that. Something to keep on your grab list in your go bag is a list of your prescription medicines. And this includes information about your diagnoses, dosage, frequency, and medical supplies needed, and allergens. These are important things that if you leave your house, this is the essential information that you're going to want and need to know, or be able to provide to someone so that you can get more. So it's always good to have kind of a list of this, right, that we can write down, or copies to bring with us in case we can't get back to our homes. So it's also important to store extra non-prescription drugs like pain relievers, fever relievers, antihistamines, and antidiarrheal medicines that could be essential that you might need and they might not have in an evacuation shelter or a friend's house or wherever you end up that's a safe location from where you left from. So, have an extra bottle of that in your go bag as well. And then also too, if you take insulin or have any medicine that needs to be chilled or refrigerated, that's important to think about too. And maybe part of your go bag is actually a little cooler with an ice pack that you can grab to make sure that that medicine stays chilled and refrigerated at the right temperature, so that it doesn't go bad and it can still be usable. And then next we have a thing or some grab list and go bag tips for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. So a good thing is if you have this is like a way you get your alerts, make sure that it has a text display and that instead of just being auditory, it's something that has a flashing alert to make sure that when the alert comes, you're recognizing that it's happening and seeing it. And then extra batteries for a hearing aid or something that you might want to add to your go bag. And then a pen and paper in case you need to communicate with someone and it's hard to communicate and there's no interpreter available. It's always good to make sure that there's a way to still have effective communication if you don't have the same resources that you might have had at home or in a place that you had planned to go. And then another one is a battery operated lantern to enable communication through sign language or lip reading so that you can have a way to illuminate yourself or the individual that you're speaking with when it's dark outside. So just a few specific things that we can keep in the back of our mind to make sure we have effective communication. So on the same idea, here we have some tips for people who are blind or have low vision. So it's important for yourself to make your emergency supply list to have braille labels or large print or whatever works best for you, and to keep a list of your emergency supplies where you bought them on a portable flash drive maybe or an audio file. And this keeps it safe so that other people can access it as well and so that you can. And then it's always good to have the communication device that is specific to your needs. So if you utilize braille or device, make sure that's part of your emergency supply kit as well. And then another one, and this is a tip for people that have added mobility needs like myself, using a wheelchair. I use a manual wheelchair, but if I had a power wheelchair, it'd be important to make sure that it would I could have a backup and that it would be lightweight so that I could, make sure I have a way to go out in case the batteries go out or anything like that. That's important to remember. And then it's important too to be able to show others how to assemble and disassemble your wheelchair in case you have to transfer into a vehicle that doesn't have a lift or something that you're not used to. It'll be really important to know how to disassemble the chair you're using so that you can help instruct the people around you or do it yourself to make sure that nothing's getting damaged. Because if our wheelchairs and things that we rely on for everyday mobility will be essential during an evacuation situation. So we want to really know our equipment firsthand. And if we've never disassembled your chair before, or it's new, or you've never taught a family member or whoever's in your transportation plan how to do it, maybe just invite them over for a pizza one Friday night and you guys can assemble and disassemble your chair for fun and time each other doing it. But it's important to have that practice ahead of time because it may seem like a simple thing, but if you've never done it before, the last time you want to be trying is during a situation that has added stress. And then another one is just purchase extra batteries for the wheelchair if it's battery operated, and the same thing with extra batteries for any assisted devices. And then if you can't purchase extra batteries, it's important to try and find backups for that and keep them charged at all times. So just kind of, and this is all going to be very specific to you and your own situation. So maybe everything that we've talked about doesn't pertain to you. That's okay. It's not supposed to, but it's just really to get us thinking about the things that, we don't think about every single day and kind of saying, okay, well, I use this every day and never would have thought to bring that. And that's really all we're doing is to help get the brainstorming to happen now so that we can be more prepared. And then a few more things for tips for added mobility needs. So we want a good thing is also for wheelchairs, if you don't have solid tires, like for myself, I have inflatable tires on my chair. So it's important to have a patch kit or a can of that Fix-A-Flat so that we make sure that our tires stay inflated and and that won't be something that prevents us from leaving quickly. And then it's also important to have an extra mobility device. So if you use a cane or a walker, to maybe have an extra one of those or a different type of one that you can keep by the door in case you need to leave quickly to make sure we're not leaving without that. And also good items, if this pertains to you, is a portable air pump for tires maybe. And then also make sure you take your seat cushion with you as well to make sure you're not getting pressure sores or anything like that because it would be, you have to leave your home for a while and you leave without your cushion because maybe you only have one and you take your backup chair. That's something important to keep in mind. Maybe have that on your grab list, because if you have to be away from home for an extended period of time, the last thing, we know how uncomfortable it is to not have our cushions we need. So we want to make sure that we're, we don't have any wound, like pressure sores, or our skin staying good, especially during an evacuation. And this is another one that we want to communicate with our neighbors to make sure that they know that if they're your transportation ride and everyone's rushing to get in the car, they know that maybe you need a walker or your cane or your foldable wheelchair. They know about that ahead of time so that that's not getting left behind in the hustle and bustle. So please, if anyone has any questions, I know I've been given a lot of information, and we'll share these slides after as a follow-up email as well, so you can go back and revisit these lists and kind of see which one pertains best to you. But also feel free to unmute yourself or give some sort of sign in the chat, and we'd be happy to answer any specific questions as well. Exactly. I'm looking at the chat now. So Don, that's exactly right. Don't forget your charger. That's super important. So now another one too is something that isn't necessarily something you would think about right away, or maybe you might, but we want to put it in there. So not only do us, the humans, need to leave during an evacuation, but if we have a pet or a service animal, it's really important to know that they have to come with too, and they're going to need some essential items as well. So you also want to build a kit for your pet or service animal, and that would involve making sure you have a little baggie of food that would last for several days in an airtight waterproof container, so that we can make sure that they're taken care of food-wise. And then also a water bowl as well, and a jug of water is really important. Have one of those little bowls that can compact, or something that's plastic that won't break, to make sure that we're thinking about the needs of the animal as well. If we have to go to a place other than your home for a longer period of time, that's going to be really important. And pretty much the same things that we think about for ourselves, we'll want to think about for our animals as well. So if your pet or service animal takes any medicine, to make sure you keep an extra supply of that in the go bag as well, in a waterproof container. And then also a first aid kit if there are any specific needs, in case they get something in their paws or have to go through terrain that is unfriendly. So we want to kind of think about not only about ourselves, but if we have to leave quickly with our animals or service animals, we want to make sure that we're thinking of their needs as well. And everyone that's leaving will be good for the period of time that you have to be away from.
I'll add to that as well. Myself, as a deaf person, I have a in-home service dog, and I rely on her for a lot of sounds that happen. So if my phone goes off in the middle of the night because there's some alert that comes on, I'm depending on her to wake me up, to let me know what's going on. So that's really key for me to have that ready. And I'll be honest, my pets are the first ones I pack for, and then myself, because they're the first ones I'm gonna take care of and evacuate. Myself is the last to come, because my pets are my medical equipment. That's how I look at it, and that's how a lot of us look at our service animals. So that's just something to keep in mind, is to really, really prepare your pet for that. And even just animals in general, if it's not a service animal, I really highly encourage you to keep some of these things in your car or in some type of transportation that you use, just so it's already there. Have it in your car, have it in your home, have it at your office, at work if you have to evacuate from work. So just start thinking in different places that you can keep just a small bag for your pet and for yourself as well. I would love to ask Billy what his experience has been in terms of disasters and just evacuation or anything like that.
Hi, guys. You hear me okay? Good deal. Craig, you absolutely nailed it. You actually brought up something I didn't think about. In one part with the garage opener, if you're sitting in a wheelchair, you can't reach that thing up there and pull it down and keep the garage open. How's that going to happen? It's like, okay, that was an oversight I never thought about and never experienced that. But yeah, you being a crunch if you didn't have a way to get around that. So thank you for bringing it up. So you absolutely nailed it right there with all that stuff that it's put out. It's great. Yes, I do think that if anyone had the chance to get away and pre-evacuation, do so right at the pre-evac sign. Don't wait until the evac comes up for a couple of reasons. One is because you're going to hit a horrendous amount of traffic getting out of there. Second thing is, this is a little bit off point, but it's related to, you might have a spouse or a family member or something that need, like my son about a couple months ago was out bicycle riding, and all of a sudden it started pouring rain. And so he texted my wife to go out and pick him up with the truck and bring him back home with the bicycle. Well, my wife had to make an extra stop because her fuel was too low. So my advice to you guys is don't leave your fuel tank almost on the E, because you need to be able to get out of there on the fly. You have no time to stop at the gas station. Or even if you do stop at the gas station, the credit card thing might not be working because all the electronic systems are down. And in addition to that, with the electronic systems are down, the cell towers get blocked up. With the Marshall fire, the Black Canyon fire, the Waldo Canyon fire that we had out there, people were trying to call their friends and stuff like that, and they couldn't do that because all the cell towers were blocked up. There was no way out. And it turned out there were two of our deaf friends who were using Facebook Messenger to communicate with each other. Somehow it works a lot more better. I don't understand that, but it worked out really good for them. They were able to communicate that way. So think about that when they get in those situations. The other part about evacuation pieces is we still have not, even after the Marshall fire, we still have not perfected the notification system of where the shelters in place are at. And when you have the TV up on the screen and you got the scrolling captioning down on the bottom and a little call bar on the bottom down there talking about where to go for the shelter, it does not have an audio transcription. So if you're blind, visually impaired, you're not going to see where the shelter in place locations are, the details are for that. So audio description or transcription for a shelter in place, or verbally state out where the shelter in place might be a good idea for the people who are blind, visually impaired. They're not going to be able to know what to go in there. And I like that idea where you talked about, when you're talking about getting a pre-designated driver. So if you don't have a vehicle or you don't drive and you have a neighbor or you have XYZ person, you have a way of contacting him or her, pre-designated driver. That's excellent right there. I like that. I'm going to add on that in mine. So I'm stealing some of the information from me. Thank you for that, Craig. That was awesome. And the last piece is, for those of you who are deaf and hard of hearing, do not have visual alarms in your house, you can contact the local American Red Cross and have them install smoke alarm, visual smoke alarm for you in your home for free of charge. They'll install it for you. It takes a little time, but they'll get it to you for free. So it's just an FYI. That's all I can think of. It. You nailed it on the head. Oh, by the way, Mary, the interpreter, is beautifully there because she's got a nice white background, nice outfit, and great clear sound. So thank you for that, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Billy. We really appreciate your expertise and giving some examples there as well. And before we talk about the example of the list that's on the screen now, I did want to mention one more thing about what Taylor was saying is if you have a service animal, those do count as an extension of yourself. And that is a part of you there, your mobility device. So any evacuation shelter that you go to, you can by law and should always know that you can bring your service animal with you and know that that's appropriate. So that's always something to remember, that by law, service animals are an extension. They are your mobility device, and you have a right to take them with you to a shelter. So that's important to know. Mm-hmm. And then the next slide this is just an example of what a grab list might look like. And it may seem silly to add a location on that because you're at home and of course you might know where everything is, but when you're moving quickly, and just think how many times that you can't find your sunglasses or you can't find the jacket that you want because it's always in a weird place or you just can't remember it. And remember, in a high stress situation, you're going to be moving quickly and your memory may not be as good as it is in lower stress situations. So it's a good tip to not only put the items, and the first item on this list is Freckles. That's in the individual's dog who made this list. and kind of put it in order of priority. And this list also is a very good example too, because what we find important and that's something that we can't live without might be different from somebody else. So that might be maybe photo albums that you don't have digital copies of, or a purse, or a box of mementos, things that, you know, you can always buy a new TV or a new jacket or anything like that, but a box of mementos or family photos, that's something that might be a higher priority and something that you can't live without. And that is something that by all means should be a priority and at the top of your list. And then of course, there's also medications for the pet, human medications, books, clothing, and so on, and all the essentials that we talked about with the location associated with them, so that not only do you know, like, oh, I need the photo album that has pictures of grandma in it. Where is that? You know, okay, well, that's in the hallway, or that's the box to the left of the bedroom. And just all these little tips that can help us in these high stress situations so that we're not having to do any extra thinking. We've already done the prep work. We know exactly where to go, what to do, and we can get ourselves out of that environment into safety as quick as possible.
So this is like the second to last slide, and I just want to mention this just so you guys are aware of it. The Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering has a program in place called Surviving in Place, and Colorado's Medicaid programs is offering two different programs, the battery backup program. You can use the QR code and it'll take you to the website, and it'll take you to either program that you're interested in. So the battery backup program, you can apply for it and see if you qualify, but it allows a machine, as you can see in the picture, that will generate electricity for you if your power goes out, which is really critical for people that need electricity in order to survive for some of their medical equipment and stuff like that. The next program is a pre-assembled go kit, which is super, super helpful for people that are already overwhelmed by some of this information. So you can apply for it and see if you can just get an already pre-assembled go kit bag that's already ready for you. So that way it takes the load off of you, and you can look in there and just say, okay, I've got some of these things and this will really help. And then you can add whatever is more specific to your needs.
And just in case you can't scan that QR code right now, don't worry. We'll add the link in the follow-up email that goes out. So we encourage everyone to use that link and try and apply for those resources. And please let us know too if you need assistance in applying for those programs or anything like that. So we're here to help as well with anything. And if you have more specific questions, or you think of something that you didn't get to ask that we can help with, the next slide will have our my contact info, and then you'll receive the follow-up email from Taylor. So you have both of our info. So please continue to use us as resources, and feel free to reach out for any kind of follow-up questions or putting together lists. And just know that we're here as a resource to help you navigate all this. And the idea is we're all in this together. So we want to help support each other and make sure that we're just remaining safe and independent.
Lacey, I saw your hand go up briefly a little while ago. Did you have a question or something you wanted to share?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. Thank you for your patience. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows the pre-assembled go kits are very minimal, and they do require quite a bit to be added to them. So they do come with a pamphlet that says, what is recommended to be added to them, but make sure people know that just ordering the kit and throwing it in their car will not give them what they need to be prepared for a disaster.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lacey, for letting me know, because I was not aware of that. And these were just some resources that were relayed to me by some partners. So thank you for sharing that information. And yeah, we definitely want people to be more prepared than just minimal necessities. So
yeah. And also our grab bags are going to need to be really specific to us as individuals. So we'll want to add a lot of stuff too that we're know. So hopefully it's a good base, but with everything else, we're gonna wanna make sure we're looking at our own situation specifically and then customizing the grab bag specific to who we are as people and our needs to make sure that we're prepared. And thank you so much for that comment, Lacey.
Yes. Are there any last minute questions, feedback, observations? Since it is now 7 o'clock, so we should wrap it up, but we would like to, just give everybody an opportunity to say something if needed.
And if not, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking a little time on this evening to spend with us and learn about some preparedness. And, feel free to follow up with us with any questions. And yeah, we really appreciate your time. And hopefully we all feel a little bit more prepared and can start working on our grab bags and grab lists to make sure that we're keeping each other safe. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you guys stay warm for tomorrow, stay safe, be prepared for tomorrow as well. And we will follow up with an email with the slides, the video recording, and please reach out if you have any further questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Have a good night.